Want to welcome you back into Live Now from Fox. I'm Austin Westfall. We want to get the latest on the Israel-Hamas war and the wider tension that we're covering in the Middle East with Dr. Alon Burstein. As always, Alon, it's good to see you. You and I have been, kind of just watching for a good amount of time now. We keep talking about an expected retaliatory strike. My question for you is, what would that actually look like in the initial moments? How would we know that something major is actually happening?
Good to see you, Austin. And yeah, we spoke a couple of days ago, and we said maybe the retaliation would happen, that weekend. And you were like, "Is it possible we won't see anything?" And I said, "Yeah, it is. We don't really know what Iran is planning. Over the last 5 days, we've seen several different things that both Israel and its allies have thought to be okay. Iran is finally going to carry out its retaliatory strike, and it wasn't. In one case, we saw the IDF in a very, very unusual manner all of a sudden order all IDF soldiers who may be on vacation or people who may be affiliated with the IDF in countries neighboring Iran, like Azerbaijan or areas like Armenia, to immediately return to Israel. That means there was some intelligence leak suggesting there might be Iran might be trying to carry out some attack against either Jewish or Israeli targets or IDF soldiers in those countries. Then we've seen a lot of hype that Iran may be planning its attack on the ninth day of Av. We also talked about that, a very, very significant and symbolic day in the Jewish religion. That didn't happen. That was in the last 24 hours. Then we saw Iran make this statement, on the one hand, rejecting the call, like you said, of the different European leaders. On the other hand, also leaving sort of an opening saying, but if the upcoming negotiations that we may talk about that are going to happen on Thursday, if they progress well, maybe Iran won't retaliate at all this tells us, first of all, no one knows. No one really knows what Iran wants. The one who's being more vocal about this is Hezbollah. First of all, they have said that their retaliation is a done deal. It's going to happen regardless of the negotiations. But the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has repeatedly stated what is happening right now is part of what Iran and its allies want. Everyone in Israel is on edge. The entire Middle East is mobilized. All airlines practically have canceled their flights to Israel. The United States is mobilizing military. We have generals, you have everyone talking about what is happening. That's part, according to Hassan Nasrallah, of what the retaliation is. It's a showing of force. Hezbollah, Iran, if they want, can now say the retaliation will come in 2 weeks and make everyone in the world be waiting for them. That is part of their strategy right now.
We have talked, I could not tell you how many times you and I have sat on this program and talked about ceasefire talks. There's another round of them this week. Do these feel different? And maybe the better question is, why does this week's ceasefire talks feel different than ones in the past?
So there's a few reasons to think that they might be, and many more reasons to think that they're not going to be any different. The reasons to think that these might be a little bit different is, first of all, ever since May, there's been this deal floating around, was on the Biden program that the president proposed, that Israel reportedly agreed to. Then after that, Israel actually added more terms to it. Hamas was going to maybe agree to it, then also added its own provisions. But there is a platform to work on, which there wasn't. Between November and May, the sides met constantly, but there was never any agreement on anything. It was mostly each side presenting its demand. Since May, we've seen the sides come to more agreements on frameworks on what might be. I'll add in the caveat, usually by just being vague, by not actually having explicit language in the deal, so each side can interpret it differently. So there has been this sort of coming forward, moving together. In addition to that, though, one of the major changes that have happened is that the negotiating parties themselves are the ones that appear to be saying, okay, enough's enough. Enough's enough. They've been mounting monumental pressure on Israel and on Hamas in order to try to actually just seal the deal and move forward. There's been all kinds of reports on carrots and sticks that are being offered to both sides. And it was a very public statement that was made, and importantly, also was not coordinated with Israel when the parties, including the United States, did not coordinate with Israel, but instead come out publicly saying we're calling on both sides almost on equal level. Israel and Hamas, we're appealing to both of you. That already shows something about the fact that even the United States is losing its patience with the procrastinating nature of the Israeli government. In turn, we also see the same thing with Qatar and Egypt vis-a-vis Hamas, but that's not new. That they're losing their patience with Hamas. It's new that the United States is almost signaling to Israel, you can't just keep on stalling. We're now publicly calling you, come to the table. And that's the reason that Israeli government, within a few hours, openly said, yes, yes, we're going to send delegates to this high profile meeting, which Israel's not done for 2 weeks already. So Israel felt that pressure. So those are the reasons to think that there might be some moving forward. At the same time, it's also important to remember Hamas is now led solely, it's a one man show. It's led solely by Yahya Sinwar in the Gaza Strip. It's a different ballgame. It's not the same thing. Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated, according to most of the leaks throughout the war, has been the one that was favoring a ceasefire versus Yahya Sinwar, who was okay playing much more hardball. So it's now led by Yahya Sinwar. There have been multiple leaks in the last several days, some trying to be more optimistic, saying that Sinwar told the negotiators that he is interested in a ceasefire. Then, however, the much more concrete document that was presented by Hamas to the negotiators said if Israel wants Hamas to even come to the negotiating table, it first has to stop the fighting in Gaza. So that's obviously something that Israel's not going to accept. But setting that term up front is already saying things are not going to go anywhere. One thing I'll add, another thing that's different about this round right now is the fact that the entire region is scared. We are on the brink of the explosion of the powder keg. And that is the reason that countries like Egypt, countries like Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Qatar are likely to be mounting more pressure on everyone to say, yes, but keep the sides talking. Keep them actually in the negotiating table. Don't let this explode, because if this explodes, we're that much closer to that complete regional escalation.
Our camera in Tel Aviv, of course, it's the early morning hours there right now. Hamas fired 2 rockets at Israel's commercial hub in Tel Aviv on Tuesday for the first time in months. And Israeli airstrikes killed a number of Palestinians in Gaza as mediators aimed to resume ceasefire talks later in the week, according to Reuters. I feel like, as this reporting from Reuters mentions, this is the first time in months that we've seen Hamas shooting rockets at Tel Aviv proper. What's the significance of Hamas still having the capability to perform offensives of this type alone?
So, to be perfectly honest, I would not read too much into this firing of missiles at Tel Aviv right now for several reasons. It's not news that Hamas still has this capability. Hamas has long range rockets and missiles. The IDF is reporting almost every other day that it has uncovered another array of long range missiles. This means these missiles are still there. These 2 missiles specifically, also, I did not read that much significance into their firing. I don't think this was a message by Hamas. What happened is the IDF has been carrying out a major operation in Han Yunis. It started 5 days ago in the Abasan regions in the eastern parts of Han Yunis. It then moved towards the western parts of Han Yunis into Hamid City. The IDF just issued evacuation orders to Palestinians there 2 days ago. The Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad movements have a pattern that whenever the IDF is coming close to uncovering a rocket launching array or missiles that are primed to launch in a certain arena where there's fighting, they launch those missiles. They don't want them to be caught. They don't want those missiles to be dismantled. So these missiles were fired literally hundreds of meters, several hundred yards from where IDF soldiers were. They were prepared in advance, and I think this was much more Hamas just seizing the opportunity. Hey, this missile launching array is going to be uncovered. Fire those missiles. So I would not read actually too much into this in terms of, is Hamas sending a signal? Look, here we are. They have been doing that in the last 2 months. In the last 2 months, Hamas has fired many more rockets than they did in the 6 months before that, primarily to the areas surrounding Gaza Strip. And they said this is a show of force. They're firing from the northern parts of the Gaza Strip in order to show the IDF withdrew. It said that it cleared the north. No, you didn't. In this case, those 2 rockets appear to have just been seizing an opportunity, not necessarily sending a message as part of the negotiations. So I would take this instance as a much more isolated one for now.
What's been happening up north? What's been happening between the IDF and Hezbollah as of late?
So again, we're seeing this powder keg, and really what we've seen is, on the one hand, the same type of escalations that we've seen the entire war, starting October 8th. Hezbollah fires rockets, Hezbollah fires missiles, fires mortars, fires drones, and the IDF carries out airstrikes against Hezbollah targets, infrastructure, military structures. We've seen the continuation of that. The only thing that's different is the level. ever since that attack in Majd al-Shams in northern Israel that killed, I think it was 10 kids aged 10 to 20. Ever since then, and the IDF then carried out the assassination of Fuad Shukr, the same type of rockets and missiles and then IDF retaliations have been going on, only at a much higher level. If prior to this, we saw that there were usually 20, 30 rockets fired a day, we're seeing well over 100 being fired each day. At the same time, the IDF retaliations, until now, if what we've seen is airstrikes targeting primarily the southern towns of Lebanon and primarily Hezbollah targets, we're seeing the IDF becoming quote unquote more bold in carrying out attacks targeting Hezbollah operatives in the areas of Tzor, Sidon. We've seen other attacks even in Beirut itself. Hezbollah has been reportedly evacuating its headquarters in the Dahya region of Beirut, all in preparation of these IDF strikes. So we're seeing the same thing, and the same escalatory nature of rockets, IDF airstrikes, only at a much higher level. What remains to be seen is what is going to be Hezbollah's retaliation, because Hezbollah is playing a very different game than Iran. Iran still plays the game of the international community. Iran lodged complaints in the United Nations over attacks that Israel carried out or that were attributed to Israel, over the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. So Iran is still saying that it is going to attack military targets, that it is playing seemingly, again, by the rules of the game in international warfare. Hezbollah doesn't pretend to do that. What is Hezbollah going to do? It is saying that it is going to carry out a major retaliation. It is saying it is still going to carry out revenge and retribution, and that their retaliation has nothing to do with the negotiations. They don't care what's going to happen on Thursday, on the one hand. On the other hand, Hezbollah is under monumental pressure from within Lebanon. I've said this many times. Lebanon's economy is decimated. Inflation rate is over 90%. The government is a complete stalemate for over 2 years. And the one thing that Hezbollah does not want to have to answer for is the IDF decimating Lebanon the same way it has decimated Gaza. So those two things coming together, on the one hand, Hezbollah not being restrained by international rules and protocols. On the other hand, the fact that they are restrained internally by Lebanon likely is going to mean that Hezbollah is going to launch a retaliation. It's going to be major, but I suspect they're not going to try to inflict that many casualties. They're going to try to do something very symbolic. Maybe it'll be a drone attack on main IDF Air Force bases or the main IDF, the equivalent of the Pentagon in Tel Aviv. Maybe it will be all kinds of symbolic things that they do. They want to have a show of force. They want to be able to save face after that, quote unquote, humiliating assassination of their chief of staff, Fuad Shukr. They do not want to give the IDF the excuse to decimate Lebanon. They don't want to answer for that at this point.
We'll see what, if anything, comes of the ceasefire talks on Thursday. As always, Alon, good to see you. We always look forward to your daily YouTube uploads as well. Have a good night.